welcome to the Imperfect Moms Club.
I am excited to be here.
We always have like the little like jitters before where we're like, well, we're pretty on brand, we're imperfect. And so like so it always works out that way. But I mean, it's on brand, like I said. So I wanted to just start this off by Karen, if you could introduce yourself and tell us about what you do and who you are, and just anything you want to tell us and your story. And you can be as detailed as you want or not tell us. We like to get kind of personal on our show, but I mean, you can, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me on the show, and thank you for what you do in the world, which is awesome. So I got married late. I was 34 when I got married. I was 36 and 38 when I had my two kids, and I really thought I knew what I wanted. I'd been around the block a couple of times, and 7 years into my marriage, it just was clear that it was high conflict. It was hard, and the kids were young. The first memory of like the big fight that was the beginning of the end was my daughter's 2-year-old birthday. So sad, because the kids, you have kids and it's like so beautiful and they're so much fun and they bring wonder and delight, and then you have this other thing going on that's just really stressful. So I started, I went into therapy and everything else, but ultimately nothing worked, and I filed for divorce, and I lived in New York. And so it was a 3.5-year divorce. Wow. And my kids were just barely in grade school. And I mean, if I tell you high conflict, so, CPS was involved, the police got involved a few times, the kids had to be in therapy. It was very heavy and very heartbreaking.
I'm so sorry.
Seeing my children and what they had to go through. And so, but I was guided enough to just keep creating a good support team, a really good therapist and good therapist for the kids. Anyway, P.S., when I finished my divorce 3.5 years, and I went into a 12-step program, and I really tried to keep the focus on myself because that was the only thing I had any control over. In divorce, you have no control over the process. When I emerged, I was so much more aware of how broken I was going in, what part I played in the conflict and the fear and the whole bit, that I really felt great about myself. And that was the beginning of realizing that what I was doing, which was selling commercial printing, seemed fairly irrelevant, And so within the next year or two, I found life coaching, and life coaching is really about helping people get from where they are to where they want to be. It's transition. And I thought, well, divorce is really the most devastating and multi-tiered transition. So I became a life coach, and I've been doing divorce and relationship coaching since 2010.
That's amazing. I love hearing about people that like they realize, their calling is helping people, and they start to do what their calling is. I love it.
Yeah. And for me, I think that it was people say, so how was that 3.5 years? And, it was a living hell. It was so, whether I was heartbroken for myself or angry or heartbroken for the kids, it was hard. So to be able to take like the most painful stage of my life and make it like my passion and my purpose in life has been such a blessing.
Yeah.
Well, I love that, because I think it's great that like this has been your calling, but you didn't know that like when you were like 18 and going to college. It's like, sometimes you don't really find out until you're farther on in life, and just because you don't have it all figured out in college doesn't mean like, well, I've changed my major 4 times. I guess I'll just stick with this and my life is over, And then also I can't say like I love that you had to go through a hard time, but I love that you are a life coach who understands some hardships, because it's really hard for me to listen to people who've had like a perfect life. I'm like, you don't get it, Yeah. So even though every situation is very different and all of that, just knowing that someone else has had struggles through life makes, at least for me, I want to listen to you all the more,
Yeah.
And I think that like what you guys do, you bring little people into the world, and it's not on our joyful, delightful days where we're growing so much. It's on the days where our patience is being tested, where fear is coming up. And so divorce is kind of like a super, super big crisis to hit. But one of the things we talk to our clients about is that every opportunity is an opportunity for growth, if you look at it that way. And it's really the hardships and when we are upset and when we face struggle that we're invited into becoming the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, I love because I mean we learn from all the experiences, and like all of my trauma and all my past experiences, all of our things that we all have, they all kind of make us who we are. So yes, it was hard going through something, but being able to like use that to rebuild something even better than before. I love that. I think that's amazing. So I really love when people are able to do that, when they're able to like, you take your pain and you make it into something, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's like making me like a little emotional. It's been a weird few months. But yeah, so anyway, with that, I wanted to bring us into our first break, and then after that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about divorce and how it kind of changes the family dynamic. But be right back. So welcome back from the break. And so now I will ask some questions, and we'll just talk a little bit more about divorce and what happens to a family that's going through a divorce. And specifically, so how does it affect like the dynamic, I guess? Because I mean, children, especially with children, I mean, children can sense when there's something wrong. So, I feel like something like divorce, like when parents are fighting, it's such a personal thing, but then, you have to kind of take a step back and think about, okay, well, there's other people in the house that are seeing this.
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to kind of get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to say is it's the absolute hardest decision you'll ever have to make. It's so excruciating, because especially when you have children, because you're not just deciding about your own life. And a lot of times people come to us in that should I stay or should I go phase. And I want to comment on what you just said. For the people who want to stay for the children, who have a lot of conflict in their house, there's a couple of things that are really important to keep in mind. Number one, there's research that children fare much worse in a conflict home than in two homes that are peaceful. And conflict doesn't have to be yelling and screaming and throwing plates across the room. If somebody in that relationship tends to isolate and shut down and be passive aggressive, give us silent treatment, the energy, our children are they're just such innocent receptors of energy. And so they will giggle when mommy and daddy are hugging or holding hands or doing something because they feel so good about that energy. And they'll like shut down and go in their, electronic device or their bedroom if they feel the stress. So if you stay for the children, but there's a lot of conflict, do some research and see whether or not that's the best decision. And then for me, working with divorced couples for over a decade, what I've noticed is we play out our first intimate relationship in our marriage. And so it's either our relationship with our mother, our father, our siblings, or a mixture of that. It's like people can almost blueprint, yeah, I married my dad, or I married a version. And so when you take that concept that what we learn about intimate love when we're in our family of origin is what we almost unconsciously attract into our lives as an adult. And so if you're staying in an unhealthy marriage where both parents are just friends under the same roof, but there's not a lot of affection, or you sleep in two bedrooms, or there's a lot of arguing, or one parent's never around, keep in mind that you are training your children that is that's going to be their experience of intimate love, and that's what they're going to go out in the world and attract. And so I think those are two really big keys in making the decision. And then to your point, does it change the dynamic? Typically the dynamic's already on its ear, because one party's gotten to this point. And then, it could be that your spouse comes home and says, I haven't been happy in a while, and I'm interested in someone else. Then you feel sideswiped. And especially if that's the mom who's taking care of the kids, that just creates a whole nother wave where you just really need a support team, regardless if you don't know what you're going to do about it. Because, as moms, we don't have time to breathe to begin with. And then you put that kind of a emotional download. And that's very overwhelming. It's very hard to be present and patient with your kids when you're like utterly stressed out and scared and angry. So that early stage of should I stay or should I go, making the decision, and then even how to live under the same roof after the decision is a particularly tender part of the process.
Yeah. And actually I didn't even write down this question, but as you were talking, I was like, light bulb, so how do you, I guess, because children are they're so sensitive and they can feel this energy. How do you know, because it's such a big, devastating decision to make. So you don't just want to make it like on a whim.
Right.
And if there is this bad energy, how do you know, when to go and when to try to stay,
And that's a pretty tough question to ask. What I would say is this: And I have a question I'll throw out at the audience and you guys as an example. So a lot of times when someone comes to me and they say, I think I need to hire a divorce coach, my spouse wants a divorce. I'll tell them, well, if you don't want it, then let's work on you working on you in the relationship and see what happens. And so there's that process. The best place you're going to learn about your own shortcomings, behaviors that don't serve you, triggers, is with your spouse, because that's just how it works. And so you can do a lot of work for yourself. And then oftentimes I'll say, oftentimes people know if they should stay or go, but they're in fear. And so a good question to ask is if you've been like kind of like sitting on, I felt like I was straddling the fence for years. I felt like I was holding everybody's life on hold until I could make this ridiculously difficult decision. And someone had said to me, if you came home and your spouse was sitting on the step with the bag packed and said he was done and he was leaving, what's your first feeling? And I had such an overwhelming sense of relief. Yeah. And other people don't. And so that's a great question to ask, to say, like, where are you at in terms of, like, you know, the children specifically? I think that I've never met anyone who's made a rash decision to leave without, you know, first and foremost, taking the kids into consideration. Like, I think this is the key to it. It takes one to forgive, it takes two to reconcile. One of the best ways that people know is when they've tried and tried and tried, and they're the only one trying. And so it's like, well, you just can't reconcile if your partner isn't going to roll up his or her sleeves and reconcile. And so that's another way where it's like, it doesn't matter how much you want to protect the children. You're choosing to live in dysfunction without an equal partner, or find a better path for you and your kids.
Right. And then, not to make this more complicated than it already is, but then you add like mental health issues into account. Like, I mean, you know, I have a slew of things going on, but I know there's a lot of, there's like anxiety and depression and things that may make you feel like situations are worse than they are, or, you know, if you fight with your spouse and you get triggered because of something else, you know, and so it isn't the marriage that's the problem, but it's, you know, but it's hard to kind of reconcile those things. Like, so that must be even tougher. I mean, I'd imagine. I don't even, you know, how do you even begin to figure that one out?
That's a really great question, because now we're actually talking about, you know, do you have a systemic problem or a circumstantial problem? And so, you know, if you've been, let's go back 12 months, right? Like living, working, spouse working from home, kids learning from home, you know, somebody maybe lost their job, or somebody's parent got sick or something. That is not the time to make a big decision. Like, and in 12-step programs, one of the things they say is like literally put yourself in a bubble, wait 6 months or 12 months. If something happens, you do not want to make a decision from that place. You may be in fear, you may be in grief. And so, to your point, if something happens and it's situationally difficult, you really want to evaluate the long game. Has the relationship been primarily good? Have we been able to troubleshoot? Have we had decent communication? Has there been a foundational sense of respect and support, right? Tenderness and compassion for the fact that we're all a little bit broken. So we all come with our sloppiness. Like, if those things have been in your relationship and there's just this situational thing, you want to put the pause button on, find some grace and patience, and see if you can, you know, wait that out. Kids or no kids. Yeah.
Oh man. This is
good.
Yeah, I'm just this heavy topic.
I also wanted to just talk about what happens, which might be more aligned with a lot of your audience, like what happens when we're triggered,
Yeah.
because divorce is an entire season of being triggered. But I think that there's a lot to learn and look at, that I would love to talk about.
Yeah,
and some
definitely.
red flags. So one of my favorite sayings is that every upset is a setup. And so if I stopped looking at every time my emerging adults triggered me as being, excuse me, usually that's off. Let me say that again. So every upset is a setup. So if I look at getting triggered, let's say by my emerging adults, the initial reaction is always going to be anger, fear, whatever. But the minute you realize I'm triggered, there's an opportunity there. The setup is for personal work. And so, whether you find that, wow, I really need to grow my patience with my toddler who happens to be like painfully tenacious, right? So I'm getting aggravated. Because I don't have the patience or the compassion in that moment that I need. And so it could be about, I have such a difficult toddler, or it could be about, wow, there's an opportunity for me. Like my little girl is going to be the greatest gift to me and teaching me how to be more gracious and patient in these situations. And so if you take it to your spouse, if every upset is a setup, when things are difficult, again, health, finances, problems with the kids, right? Disagreements and how to raise them, it's very easy to get stuck in your position. And then we get sloppy, we get angry or upset. And so we get reactive. And when we're reactive, we're not operating and speaking from a rational mind. We're kind of like reacting. We're having this knee-jerk reaction where we may say something we really wish we hadn't afterwards, where we're not articulating our opinions very well because there's such a wave of emotion. I read a book, she called it the emotional load. She said, when you deliver an emotional load with your message, people never get the message, they get the emotional load. So I can sound like I'm being totally condescending to you and trying to get you to hear what I have to say, but you're not hearing what I have to say. You're just like stinging from the condescension. You're going to come back at me.
Right. Yeah. I like, if you're talking to, I mean, this is going to be like an entirely separate episode, but I've recently started a journey through complex PTSD. And so like a lot of my, like I've been getting triggered a lot. And so a lot of my day is kind of like, I kind of get stuck in flight response. And so like, if something does come up, like I tend to kind of react in a, like I have to like get out of here, whatever, kind of thing. And so I can't be in my wise mind when I'm doing that. And so like a lot of the work that I've been trying really hard to like recognize and then kind of step away or something. And, because it isn't my husband that's doing something bad or making me whatever. This is just, I'm having an emotional flashback, or I'm having something. And then, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's why all my questions, because I've been having, and it's been an interesting few weeks for me. And so I'm just, so I mean, not to like, I don't want to like, oh, it's about me, but
no. But I think that your point is a good one too, Elizabeth, because the key thing when we get triggered, and you just said this is what you do, it's like we have a 12-step divorce recovery program, and step 1 is curbing the conflict. And so conflict is often internal conflict, or it can be external. And the example you just gave, it's like the best thing that we could do is create some space. So some people say, hold on to the pause, like just slow it down. I'm in my reactive state. This isn't the time to really say anything or do anything. Can I give myself a few moments just to kind of get back in my body and reconnect with that thinking side of my brain, so that I can respond more effectively rather than react. And that's a practice. It's like all of these things, whether it's patience or non-reactivity, they're all practices. And I was a single mom through most of my kids' younger years. And so there was just so much opportunity, both through the divorce and through the raising the kids as a single parent, to just see all of the stuff that came from my family of origin that wasn't really how I wanted to be. It wasn't really how I wanted to react. And so there's the beauty of keeping the focus on ourselves is this ongoing refinement of who we are.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, we it's just, I guess it's hard to kind of like in those moments, because things happen really fast, right? Like the toddler does something really fast, or like I'll be in the middle of something and then Lily will be like causing a problem, and so like I kind of just like have to react really quickly. And so like I mean it's really hard to for anybody. Like it would be really hard to just like be like, okay, no, I have to pause, because sometimes, I mean, especially as moms, we don't always have the time to be like, okay, Lily, like
Oh,
allow me
absolutely.
10 minutes to like come back to my body, like, so
But
I mean,
I will
kids
say
would
to
be
you,
like,
you're
what are you
absolutely,
talking about?
yeah, you're absolutely right. The pause in the situation with the little kids is more even later in the day or an hour later, as you do that scan, you'll see that you behaved in a way that like even bringing your attention to it, the next time it happens, you'll catch it sooner. And so it's in the beginning, we kind of catch it after it happens. But then it's like you can find yourself catching yourself halfway through a reaction to your kid that you don't want to have, and shifting it. And so even taking a look after the fact really helps just slow those reactions. But you're absolutely right. In the midst of it, it's just like, especially, I mean, there are so many times where they're going haywire. I know that the grocery store was one of my favorite places when I had both my kids, not so much.
I'm
Every
not
mom
brave
has
enough.
to have a grocery store story.
Yeah, I'm not brave enough to bring both. I haven't done it yet because I'm like, nope. So right now I'm getting my groceries delivered because I'm like, I am barely hanging on with just like myself with both at home. Like I can't even, I mean, we go out to eat and then I can kind of do that, but like grocery store, like we don't have a double stroller. So my toddler's just either in the cart and then I have to carry the other, like I can't even imagine. I'm just like, oh, nope. Not yet. I'm not ready yet.
Grocery delivery is a beautiful thing to have.
Yeah. So I had another question, I guess more specifically for the children. So how do you because we don't know what's going on in our kids' minds, right? We don't know what's going on with them psychologically. So how do we kind of like, how can we prevent like, is there a way to prevent the trauma from it, or is there a way to kind of make it easier for them, like without knowing what is going on in there? I don't even know if I'm making sense right now, but I want to know.
I think there are a number of things that parents can do for their kids if the path of divorce is the path that your marriage is going down. And the first thing is at a very young age, like certainly by first grade, when you ask your child more than you tell them, and I talk to parents with teenagers all the time, and I'm like, 2 ears, 1 mouth, ask more than you tell. Because what we do with our children is, so you heard me and daddy fighting. How do you feel about that? Yeah. And they'll tell you. And what do you want to say to me? And instead of, I know you must have been really upset when you heard mommy and dad. Don't do that. Don't use leading statements or leading questions. And so you find out so much about your child when you ask. And of course, you'll get a lot of I don't knows as well. But when you get their answer and it's so different than what you thought it would be, you begin to see the value of asking. And then I think it's really important there's rules about telling your children, there's rules about telling them together, and about the types of things that you say. And of course, the most important thing is to let them know how deeply loved they are. I had an ex who had some mental health issues, and so he told the children that I was destroying the family and their lives. And so there was a lot of trauma in my children's life. And with many of the high conflict couples that I deal with, you have no control over the other person. So all you can do is your best. It's easy to then fall into a rage over the other person, but that doesn't help the kids either.
Yeah.
So if you have a reasonably healthy relationship, just constantly pouring into them how much they're loved, not spoiling them, which is what parents will do too. It's like, oh, they're going through such a tough time, we're not going to have boundaries, we're going to spoil them. So you don't want to do that either. And then a lot of schools have programs. My kids were in that program called the Banana Splits program, and it was all the kids in grade school whose parents were struggling in their marriage, or who had lost a parent, or who had financial crisis. And they had this like group therapy session, which was my kids emerged from grade school so emotionally intelligent because they had to deal with very hard things, but they also had the support system to learn how to say things like, I feel this when you this. Oh my God, like real helpful things. And so if you're facing this, and your child best, and even at a young age, for them to be able to know that they're going to talk to somebody who isn't going to tell mommy and daddy what they said unless they're going to harm themselves, and then they have a safe space to actually speak their truth, it's priceless. And it really helps with any trauma from the divorce.
Yeah. I guess a lot of this kind of resonates with me just because my parents are divorced. So I mean, I've never been divorced, but I was a child of divorce. And so I mean, I was one when my parents got divorced, but I don't know, they like my relationship with my dad. I mean, I could like spend hours, but yeah, my relationship with my dad was kind of weird, and then like they had kind of a weird dynamic as well. And so like it's it's really interesting to me to kind of hear from you, from like a professional, about like how do we kind of shield our kids from this? How do we, because I mean it has happened. Like I mean I have, my husband and I have fought lately, actually. I feel really bad about this, but I've been like, I've been having triggering moments, and I've been kind of in my complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I've been like, I'll get into flight, and then I'll pretend that I'm a fight trauma type when I'm really not. And so it's mostly just me floundering, like, because I'm like, I can control this, damn it. Like, but really it's just me, looking like a crazy person. But so I do feel bad, because in those moments, Lily, she's always there, she's always around. And so she sees me do that. But I'm so stuck in my thing that I don't even like realize it. Like, I don't realize that, oh my God, she just saw that. Or, oh no, she probably senses that like the energy in here is awful. And so, yeah, it's been, I don't know. So yeah, I guess that's been on my mind a lot lately, is just how to kind of protect our kids from things like that. But I mean, I get like, we're all human. I mean, I guess as long as, I always talk to her about it after. I mean, she's only 2.5, so I don't know how much she understands, but I do, like, I'll tell her like, mommy shouldn't have done that, or, mommy, has been tired today, or something like that, just so she knows that, nothing's wrong. It's just, mommy's having a moment.
Yeah, I think there's at such young ages, I mean, she gets cranky when she's tired. I mean, there's always a way to speak to them where they're at. And I think for you, the awareness that comes afterwards as you do this work that you're doing with your support, that awareness is going to come sooner and sooner. That's just how it works. And so you might find yourself at the tail end of a reaction and you shut it down faster, and then in the middle of the reaction and you shut it down faster, and then you'll get to the point where you just know your tells, right? It's like my jaw starting to clench, or I feel heat, and I know what's happening. And it's amazing, just that willingness to keep looking, how it can help us shift behaviors, even trauma behaviors.
Yeah.
So, and I wish you the best of luck with that. That sounds
Oh,
really difficult.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I didn't even I wasn't even planning on bringing that up, but just as we're talking about this, I was like, something in my head was like, Lisa, ask about this.
So I have a quick one. So this is for more of the person who's on the outside, because I've had one friend who's currently going through what seems to be a very, very messy divorce process. And then I had another friend years ago who, again, it was very messy. And I just how can the person on the outside offer the best support? Because I'm I don't really want to take sides here, but I just want to offer you my love and my support in any way I can help you. But I don't know how. I don't know how to help.
That's a great question. And yeah, so a big thing we talk to people about is making sure that you have a healthy support team. So if you have someone on your support team who wants to bash your ex along with you, or your spouse along with you, that fire them from the team. That's not what you need, right? So what you want to do is really, if you help her, your girlfriend, keep the focus on herself, which is everything from, that sounds really hard, and how did it feel, and how do you feel about how you handled it, and how would you handle it differently, and what do you need? I can't tell you how often I just ask people, what do you need? And they're like, oh my God, it's such a simple question. But when you have someone in crisis who's in that, reaction, that crisis reaction, just slow it down. What do you need? And they stop and they're like, oh my God, I haven't even thought about what I needed. And that's a huge gift. So to keep the focus off of whoever they're having difficulty with, and on them, and where they're at, and what they need, and their behavior. And a lot of times we'll be very, very self-judging. And so be the voice of compassion and invite your friend into. The number one thing I do with all new clients is I tell them, if I hear you speaking badly to yourself, I'm going to shut that shit right down. It's I
love that.
I want you to be, you're doing your best. You've done your best. You're going to be kind and compassionate to yourself. And if you are living in self-condemnation and self-judgment, then one of the journeys beyond divorce is going to be a journey from that to self-compassion, because we can't do anything that's such a low conflict energy level to be beating ourselves up. We're not going to be productive. We're not going to be successful. And so gentle kindness is going to help them levitate to a higher emotional state, which is really valuable. And then you're keeping the focus on them. So anything that comes out of it will be movement in the right direction, whether or not the relationship, what I like to say is, whether it mends or ends, if you're supporting your friend in moving in the right direction with her behaviors, then you're doing great.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, because I'm just I'm not the one in the marriage, so I don't know. I'm not a fly on the wall. I don't know.
And her story,
right? It's not my story, so I don't know who. Yeah. But I just want to support and be if everything goes wrong, that I'm here. So that's great advice, because it's very messy, and I hurt for my friend, and I just want her to be okay.
So we are going to take another quick break. We'll be right back, and then we will talk about boundaries and communication and some tools to help. Welcome back. And now we are going to talk to Karen a little bit more about boundaries and about communication. So take it away.
Yeah, so just there are two other big areas that are worth looking at in your relationship. And certainly if your relationship is struggling in any way, I think so many of us aren't raised with boundaries? I mean, I'm curious about what each of your experiences.
Oh, well, my mom
were.
will be like, Brittany, you need to say no. You sign up for too many things, but then she goes and she does all the things that she tells me not to do. So like she'll say have boundaries, but then she doesn't have boundaries and I don't have boundaries, at least when it comes to signing up for things or volunteering for things. And so I'm like,
Right. Right. Exactly. So you could end up having too much on your plate. And what about you?
So well, without getting too much into it, I guess, because like I don't know who's going to be listening to this, but I didn't really learn boundaries when it comes to like emotional boundaries and things like that. And so that's always been a struggle of mine, actually, is finding boundaries and setting boundaries and like sticking to those boundaries.
Yeah.
I'm a very, it's very, very easy to just like completely like steamroll me with a bunch of stuff because I don't set boundaries with people. you know.
So I wrote an article, on our Journey Beyond Divorce website. It's called Healthy Relationships Require Healthy Boundaries. And I was raised in a fairly boundary oblivious family. And so I didn't know any of this. And I only learned by seeing how utterly uncomfortable I was with my spouse's behavior, and later seeing how broken my own boundaries were as well. And so just on a really basic level, one thing that people tend to say is, you made me feel. And so that's a broken boundary, because the truth is, nobody can make me feel sad or upset. And the three of us could experience the exact same person's behavior, let's say, but we're all going to have very different reactions. And if the behavior is hostile, and I came from a hostile family, I might be scared. I might be in fight, flight, or freeze. Whereas you guys might have a very different reaction. So part of you made me feel is, I did that because you did blank. So you made me do. And in marriages, with little kids, and there's usually financial issues, there's time issues, there's oftentimes there's intimacy issues when children are very young. And so having really clear boundaries is really, really helpful. And so a boundary keeps us safe. It says, honey, when I tell you I need 10 minutes because I'm upset about something, I need you to respect that, and not come in the bedroom. It's boundaries with kids. I mean, so often, if we come from a lack of boundaries, then our children are like brilliant boundary pushers. And so learning how to set boundaries, and there's a great series of books, Boundaries with Kids, Boundaries in Marriage, John Townsend and Henry Cloud. And a lot of times parents struggle with boundaries with their kids, and then they don't have a boundary with their partner, and it can just, and so what happens if I don't know how to set and uphold boundaries, I end up getting angry and frustrated, but I haven't made it clear that here's my line in the sand, and I haven't defended that line. A lot of times people feel like, well, I told him or her not to, but upholding a boundary isn't about telling the other person to behave differently. It's about us behaving differently. So if I tell you that I need time, and you keep walking into the room, I might lock the door. I might decide, okay, you keep walking into the room. Now I'm going to take the keys and go for a 10-minute drive, because I'm upholding the fact that I need time. I'm not going, I told you 5 times, so working with boundaries is brilliant for our relationship, every relationship that we have. And I recently had a situation with one of my siblings, and I basically said to her, I will not speak to you about my children anymore. I love you. I want to be in relationship with you, but you're not a safe person in that space. And so we can speak, and they're off the table, or we cannot speak. It's your choice. And you can set a boundary really kindly and calmly. But it really helps with all the different dynamics that we face in our relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not good at, like, I don't know where my boundaries are. Like, I don't know anything about boundaries. So, like my husband, for instance, will set a boundary with me, and then because there's a conflict, sometimes I'm not super respectful of that boundary. Like you mentioned, like I need a minute to cool down, or I need 10 minutes or something. I will be stuck in fawn. I fawn too. That's like number one trauma type is I fawn. And so like, I'm always trying to I'm like, oh, are you mad? Like, let me, like, what do we do? Whatever. And he just needs me to leave him alone for a bit. Right. And so, I mean, I think that, yeah, like boundary work, it's got to be like, you need to learn what your boundaries are and how to uphold them. But you also there's also the other side,
the other person.
Yeah.
And that's such a perfect example, because your fear is making you want to not wait. Mm-hmm. And that it invites in, well, if I wait, I get to calm down too. Mm-hmm. And it's a practice with all of these things. Like people who are like, I suck at boundaries. I'm like, well, can you speak Japanese? Did anyone raise you to speak Japanese? You're going to suck at that too. So whatever it is we're learning, we're going to be really weak at it in the beginning. The more important thing is if you're married, if you have children, you absolutely want to Google it, pick up the boundaries books, invest in understanding what boundaries are, what the value of them are. I would love to give you guys, if you have show notes, I could just put a link to that one article, Healthy Relationships Require Healthy Boundaries. Yeah. It's absolutely a game changer, because then you're not the victim of anyone. You've got your boundaries, you're upholding them. Hopefully you're respecting the other people in your life and what theirs are. And it's kind of like, that's great. Now we're like playing bumper cars, but we all have a buffer.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting hurt.
Yeah. The first time I ever put up like a real boundary was, it was at work. There was a work situation going on, and there were these two people fighting, and I had nothing to do with it. And somehow I got in the middle, and one person would text me, and then the other person would text me, and I was in the middle. And after a while, I was like, I can't do this. Like, nothing I'm doing is helping the situation. I'm physically suffering from this anxiety. And I remember when I told both of them, I was like, don't talk to me about this anymore. And one of them respected it, the other one not so much. But it was just so refreshing to be like, hands off. I'm not doing this. Yeah. You guys figure it out. Oh, I felt such a weight lifted off of my shoulders.
Great example. That's what happens when you set a boundary. It's like, I'm not the victim. I'm telling you no more. And if somebody plows down that boundary, you have to have your plan for how to uphold it anyway. But it's liberating. It's empowering. I mean, boundaries are really, and I think so many of us just, we came from boundary oblivious parents who came from boundary oblivious parents. Mm-hmm. And now, we get to raise our kids differently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That word no it's a good one. Yeah. It's just not one that comes very easily to a lot of people. But
and I think with kids, my mom was very heavy-handed. And so I didn't know. I mean, when my kids were little, I was like, what's the consequence? Mm-hmm. Like they say that the punishment should fit the crime. So it's like, you're grounded for a year. That's what my mom did. She was constantly grounding me for a year. So I had little kids, and I was like, I got nothing. Like, that's how I felt. Like, I got nothing. I have no idea. Like, my mom would yell and scream and do these things, and I didn't want to yell and scream. And then I know so many people who they yell and scream, no consequence. And the kids are like, oh, mom's going to yell and scream for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to get, so it's so valuable to teach them, no, like, if you do X, you get this reward. And if you do Y, you get this consequence, and you've got a boundary. raising kids that way makes a huge difference.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, do we want to, do we have any closing words or last words for our listeners, or for anyone that, I don't know, maybe listening, maybe struggling with whether or not to leave their marriage? Do you have anything, any advice?
Yeah. So if you're facing the should I stay or should I go, I would say, number one, it is the most difficult decision you're going to make. And if in doubt, don't. And if in doubt, find somebody to work with and work on how you show up in the relationship. And whether your marriage ends or mends, you'll notice your behaviors, your judgments, your insecurities, your shortcomings, and you'll work on you. And that's either going to help the marriage mend, because then hopefully your spouse wants to do the same. And if it's clear that there is no reconciliation, you're already further ahead. And the other thing I'll say is, if you're anywhere near that, then there's probably some pretty heated conversations going on.
Mhm.
And we tend to enter conversations like set in our position,
Mhm.
and maybe wrapped in judgment. And so if you could go into those conversations, stepping away from your position and actually wrapping yourself in curiosity, and bring inquiry, true inquiry, not creating my rebut while you're talking, not that kind of inquiry.
Yeah.
True, I'm fully listening with 2 ears. I want to understand you in this situation that we're disagreeing with.
Mhm.
That can truly be a game changer in communication.
Mhm. I love that, because also it helps you, like, maybe this relationship is over. Well, it gives you tools for the next relationship, because we always have to work on ourselves. There's always things to improve on. There's always a better way to do things. And so I think that's great, because focus is on ourselves. Like, okay, how can I listen better? And is there anything that I can do better as far as communicating and understanding and all of that relationship wise? Because that'll not only affect like a married relationship or like a dating relationship, that's going to affect everything, like your job, your family, your friends. And these are all tools that we all need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say about what you just said is your relationship actually is not over. You have children. You're going to be co-parenting with this person for the
Yeah.
rest of your life. And so often people divorce, and then they're doing the exact same dysfunctional dance as co-parents that they did as husband and wife. And so there's an opportunity to change the dynamic, and somebody has to lead the way. So if you're listening and you're going down that path, choose to be the leader, and change the way you communicate, and the ripple effect is powerful.
That's awesome. Can you tell us one more time where listeners can find you if they just absolutely loved this? Where can they find more of you?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. So the company is Journey Beyond Divorce. That's our website. That's our podcast. And we offer a 1-hour free coaching call to anybody who reaches out. It's just our gift. It'll help you gain clarity and figure out what your next step is. And so you can go to rapidreliefcall.com or journeybeyonddivorce.com and sign up for that.